Marilyn Monroe. The name has become one of the most recognizable in the history of Hollywood. Even today, decades after her death, people around the world still admire her beauty, watch her movies, and remember her unforgettable smile. To many, she seemed to have everything a person could ever dream of: fame, wealth, success, and millions of fans. But behind the glamorous dresses, the bright camera flashes, and the smiling photographs was a woman carrying pain that very few people truly understood. Her life was not a fairy tale. It was a journey filled with loneliness, rejection, determination, and an endless search for love and acceptance. Long before the world knew her as Marilyn Monroe, she was born as Norma Jeane Mortensen on June 1, 1926, in Los Angeles, California. Her childhood was difficult from the very beginning. She never really knew her father, and her mother, Gladys, struggled with serious mental health problems. Because of this, Norma Jeane was unable to grow up in a stable home. Instead of spending her childhood with one loving family, she was moved from one foster home to another. Sometimes she stayed with relatives. Sometimes she lived with complete strangers. At other times, she was placed in an orphanage. Every time she started feeling safe, she had to leave again. Every new home meant new faces, new rules, and another painful goodbye. As a little girl, Norma Jeane often wondered why life seemed so different for her. While other children laughed with their parents, celebrated birthdays, and enjoyed family dinners, she spent many nights wondering where she truly belonged. Those painful experiences left deep emotional scars that stayed with her for the rest of her life. Even during those difficult years, Norma Jeane found comfort in movies. Whenever she visited a cinema or saw glamorous actresses on the screen, she imagined herself standing under those bright lights. She dreamed that one day people would know her name. At that time, it seemed like an impossible dream, but she never stopped believing that her life could become something greater. When Norma Jeane turned 16 years old, another difficult decision changed her future forever. Her foster family planned to move away, and because they could no longer care for her, she faced the possibility of returning to an orphanage. To avoid that fate, she married a young factory worker named James Dougherty. Although the marriage provided stability, it was not the romantic love story that many people imagined. It was a decision made by a teenager trying to survive a difficult life. A short time later, during World War II, James joined the military and was sent overseas. Norma Jeane stayed behind and found work at a factory that produced military equipment. Every day she worked long hours, believing she was simply doing her part for the country. Then, one ordinary day, something completely unexpected happened. A military photographer visited the factory to photograph women supporting the war effort. As he walked through the building, his camera stopped on one young woman with bright eyes and a natural smile. That woman was Norma Jeane. The photographer asked if he could take a few pictures of her. She smiled and agreed. Neither of them knew that those photographs would completely change her life. Soon after the pictures were published, modeling agencies began contacting her. Her fresh face, confident smile, and natural charm quickly attracted attention. She left the factory and began working as a full-time model. For the first time in her life, she felt that the future might finally hold something better. Magazine after magazine featured her photographs. With every photo shoot, her confidence grew stronger. She realized that the camera loved her and audiences did too. As her popularity increased, she made a bold decision that would define the rest of her life. She dyed her hair a bright platinum blonde, refined her appearance, and adopted a new stage name. Norma Jeane Mortensen disappeared. The world was about to meet Marilyn Monroe. But changing her name did not instantly make her a star. Hollywood was one of the most competitive places in the world. Every year, thousands of young actors and actresses arrived with dreams of becoming famous, and most of them failed. Marilyn faced rejection after rejection. Some directors believed she was beautiful but lacked talent. Others thought she would never become a leading actress. She received only tiny roles, sometimes appearing on screen for just a few moments before disappearing again. Many people in her position would have given up. Marilyn refused to quit. Instead of feeling defeated, she worked harder than ever. She spent hours studying acting, reading books, watching experienced performers, and practicing in front of mirrors. She wanted the world to admire her not only for her beauty but also for her talent. Deep inside, Marilyn believed that one day she would prove every critic wrong. She had no idea that the biggest turning point of her career was only a few years away. The early 1950s marked the beginning of a new chapter in Marilyn Monroe's life, although she never imagined how quickly everything was about to change. After years of struggling through small roles and endless auditions, Hollywood finally began to notice her unique presence. There was something about Marilyn that audiences simply couldn't ignore. Even if she appeared on screen for only a few minutes, people remembered her long after the movie had ended. Film producers realized they had discovered someone truly special. In 1953, Marilyn starred in films like Niagara, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, and How to Marry a Millionaire. These movies transformed her from a struggling actress into an international superstar almost overnight. Her face appeared on magazine covers across America and soon around the world. Crowds gathered outside movie theaters just to catch a glimpse of her. Photographers followed her everywhere she went. Reporters wanted interviews. Fans waited for hours hoping to receive an autograph. Within just a few years, the little orphan girl named Norma Jeane had become one of the most famous women on earth. People admired her beauty, her confidence, and her glamorous personality. But Marilyn often felt that the public only saw the image Hollywood had created. She wanted people to recognize her intelligence and her ability to perform serious roles. Determined to improve herself, Marilyn moved to New York and studied acting under some of the best teachers in America. While many people believed success had come easily to her, the truth was very different. She spent countless hours reading scripts, practicing emotional scenes, studying human behavior, and learning everything she could about acting. She refused to accept the idea that she was only a beautiful face. Her dedication eventually paid off. Movie critics who had once doubted her slowly began changing their opinions. One of the greatest moments of her career arrived with the comedy film Some Like It Hot. Her performance was praised by audiences and critics alike, and the film became one of the greatest comedy classics in cinema history. For Marilyn, it was proof that hard work could overcome even the strongest criticism. However, while her professional life was reaching incredible heights, her personal life was becoming increasingly complicated. Years earlier, she had divorced her first husband, James Dougherty. In 1954, she married baseball legend Joe DiMaggio. The wedding attracted worldwide attention. Newspapers described them as America's perfect couple. Millions believed they would live happily ever after. Unfortunately, reality was very different. Joe loved Marilyn deeply, but he found it difficult to accept the constant attention she received from photographers and fans. One moment would become legendary. While filming The 7-Year Itch, Marilyn stood above a subway grate as air lifted her famous white dress. The photographs from that scene became some of the most recognizable images in Hollywood history. Although audiences loved the moment, it reportedly created serious tension in her marriage. Arguments became more frequent. The pressure of fame affected both of them. Less than a year after their wedding, the marriage ended in divorce. Despite everything, Joe DiMaggio continued to care about Marilyn for the rest of her life, showing that some feelings never completely disappear. Still searching for lasting happiness, Marilyn later married the celebrated playwright Arthur Miller. Unlike many others, Arthur admired her intelligence and encouraged her to grow as an actress. For a while, Marilyn believed she had finally found someone who understood the real woman behind the glamorous image. But even this relationship slowly began to fall apart. Long working hours, constant media attention, emotional struggles, and the pressure of fame created distance between them. Eventually, they separated as well. By the end of the 1950s, Marilyn Monroe had achieved almost everything a person could dream of. She was wealthy. She was famous. She was admired across the world. Yet every night, when the cameras stopped flashing and the crowds disappeared, she often found herself alone with the same fears and insecurities that had followed her since childhood. The little girl who had once searched for a family was now searching for peace. Sadly, that peace seemed farther away than ever before. As the 1960s began, Marilyn Monroe was one of the most recognizable women in the world. Her films, but fame could not erase the pain she had carried since childhood. Behind the glamorous smile was a woman who often felt exhausted, anxious, and alone. The pressure of constantly living in front of cameras became overwhelming. Every decision she made was judged. Every mistake became a newspaper headline. Every relationship was discussed by people who had never even met her. Marilyn desperately wanted people to see the real person behind the Hollywood image. She wanted to be remembered as a talented actress, not simply as a beautiful blonde. As the years passed, the emotional pressure became more difficult to manage. She often suffered from insomnia and found it hard to sleep. Doctors prescribed medications that were commonly used at the time to help her rest and reduce anxiety. Unfortunately, over time she became increasingly dependent on those medicines. Even while facing these personal struggles, Marilyn never stopped dreaming about rebuilding her career. She continued reading scripts, meeting directors, and making plans for future films. Friends later said that she still had hopes for the future and wanted to prove that her greatest performances were yet to come. However, life was becoming more complicated with each passing month. In the summer of 1962, Marilyn was still one of Hollywood's biggest stars, but privately she was dealing with emotional and professional challenges. Then came the night that would shock the entire world. On August 4, 1962, Marilyn Monroe was at her home in Los Angeles. The following morning, she was found dead in her bedroom. She was only 36 years old. Within hours, newspapers around the world carried the heartbreaking news. Millions of fans could hardly believe it. Hollywood had lost one of its brightest stars. The official investigation concluded that Marilyn Monroe died from a barbiturate overdose, and her death was classified as probable suicide. Even after the investigation was completed, many people refused to believe that the story had ended there. Over the decades, countless books, television programs, documentaries, and articles have presented different theories about her death. Some claimed powerful political figures were involved. Others suggested organized crime. Many believed important evidence had been hidden from the public. These theories attracted enormous attention because Marilyn had known many influential people during her career. However, despite decades of speculation and investigation, no credible evidence has ever conclusively proven those conspiracy theories. The mystery surrounding her final hours continues to be discussed even today. Perhaps that is one reason why interest in Marilyn Monroe has never disappeared. Yet, beyond all the mysteries, one truth remains clear. Marilyn Monroe changed Hollywood forever. She broke barriers for actresses. She built her own production company at a time when very few women had that level of control over their careers. She proved that determination and hard work could transform a lonely young girl into one of the most famous women in history. Her influence extended far beyond movies. Fashion designers, photographers, musicians, artists, and filmmakers continue to draw inspiration from her style and personality. Her white dress scene remains one of the most iconic moments in cinema history. Her photographs continue to sell for millions of dollars. Her movies are still watched by new generations who were born decades after her passing. More than 60 years later, Marilyn Monroe remains one of the greatest symbols of Hollywood's golden age. But perhaps her greatest legacy is not her beauty or even her success. It is the reminder that fame does not always bring happiness. Money cannot erase emotional pain, and the brightest smile can sometimes hide the deepest sadness. The little girl once known as Norma Jeane spent her entire life searching for love, acceptance, and a place where she truly belonged. Although her journey ended far too soon, her story continues to inspire millions of people around the world. She taught us that dreams can come true through courage and determination. At the same time, her life reminds us to look beyond fame and appearances, because every person carries a story that the world cannot always see. Today, whenever people speak about the greatest stars in Hollywood history, one name continues to shine brighter than almost any other: Marilyn Monroe. Her voice may have fallen silent, but her story will never be forgotten.